Hi guys, welcome back to Daniel Rosehill Plus here on YouTube. This is Daniel Rosehill bringing you this video here today on a Sunday in Jerusalem. Technically, this is the first day of our working week here where I'm based in Jerusalem in Israel. And even though it's a working day here, unlike in most of the world, it's a slow working day where we slowly begin to transition from the relaxed pace of the weekend into the work week. So this is often when I get the desire or the impetus to put up a video onto YouTube regarding something like mental health. And just to put a disclaimer here right at the start of this video, as I usually try to do, this video does merely represent my perspective as a patient or more perhaps familiarly someone taking mental health medications, i.e. I'm not a doctor, I don't purport to be a doctor, and you should not take anything in this video, not construe anything here as medical advice. If you do require personal medical advice for anxiety, depression, or any other mental health condition that you might be struggling with, absolutely bring it to the attention of your doctor. And you'll get a few steps ahead of what I can tell you. At least bring it to the attention of a mental health care professional. But I can certainly talk from my experience about a few topics, and this today's one's going to be regarding the trial and error process in medicating. So everybody's kind of probably heard, who's considered taking medication, that, well, taking medication is a trial and error process. But I feel like that statement is kind of often left hanging in the air. And there's a few questions that I think it would be interesting to go into, such as, why is medication a trial and error process? What does that trial and error process typically entail? And how many medications, how long can this trial and error process go on for? So the first thing to say about the phenomenon called the trial and error process is that it's probably in nobody's interest that it exists. It's simply a reflection of the fact that everybody has a unique physiology. And even though in the year 2023, the state of medicine and psychopharmaceuticals is pretty advanced, it's still impossible for doctors, even very highly qualified doctors like psychiatrists, to predict accurately what kind of effect a particular drug is going to have on a certain individual. It's very common that the same drug, even if you take two people with the exact same condition, is going to have a totally different effect. I have a friend who's also struggled with depression, and one of the medicines that I've taken, and I have this in common with my friend, is we've both tried a drug called Wellbutrin. Wellbutrin is a norepinephrine and dopamine reuptake inhibitor, an NDRI, and it's pretty much the only medication of its kind in its drug class. Now, when I tried Wellbutrin, it lived up to its street name of poor man's cocaine. It's called poor man's cocaine because it apparently has an effect that resembles that of actual cocaine. And when I took the drug, there was absolutely no subtlety about Wellbutrin. I brought out before 8 a.m. I brought out the rubbish. I cleaned my apartment. I signed up for the gym, and I was just feeling like I was getting into second gear. It was absolutely this crazy, very much an uncomfortable surge of energy. And personally, Wellbutrin didn't work out for me because I found the anxiety it produced tremendous. Now, when I told my friend about my experience with Wellbutrin, she tried the highest dose of the medicine, higher than most people will take, 450 milligrams, and she said she felt absolutely nothing, as if it was like taking a bowl of cornflakes or a sugar pill. And that really underscored to me the extreme difference with which people, even two patients who have the same response, will respond to medication. Now, in recent years, this trial and error process takes a while, and it's frustrating, and I'll talk about why it takes a while. There have been in recent years efforts to try to figure out why patients respond so differently to different medications, and that's taken the form of gene testing. Now, genetic testing, from what I understand, is still relatively in its infancy, and its scientific validity is not considered 100%. If you've read differently about genetic testing for medication, please feel free to correct me in the comments. But where it's available and where it is subsidized by insurance policies, the aim of this genetic testing is to test your genetic makeup and try to make this elongated process a little bit shorter by saying, well, these are the genes you have in your body. Therefore, within the SSRI drug class, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and there's 7 major SSRIs currently on the market, you can say, well, we can predict that you're going to do well on Lexapro and not on Prozac, and that can save you a bit of time. Now, the way the trial and error process works is basically, as the name suggests, by trial and error. Now, the reason it takes a long time is that typically with psychiatric medications, drugs for depression, there's 2 reasons really. The first reason is that these drugs typically have to be tapered up to. That means that you don't start taking the therapeutic dose or the dose you've been prescribed of a medication on day 1. For instance, a common starting dose of Lexapro, escitalopram, for depression and anxiety would be 10 milligrams. The dose range goes from 0 milligrams through to 20 milligrams, which is the FDA approved limit. Now, typically, even if the dosage your doctor prescribes is 10 milligrams, in order to minimize the shock to your system, because typically SSRIs tend to make anxiety worse before they make it better, and you get side effects that are worse before they're better. Typically, a doctor will say something like, take half a tablet, 5 milligrams for a week, and then move up to 10 milligrams. I've even seen some people start on 2.5 milligrams for a week, 5 milligrams for a week, and then 10 milligrams. So even more gentle tapering on processes. Then you'll, of course, take the medication, and you need to stay on the medication, assuming there aren't crazy side effects that mean you have to abort the trial, for a long enough time to give the drug a chance to work. And in the case of SSRI medications, that might be 6 to 8 weeks. So you've got the titration on period, you've got the trial period, and then when you get off psychiatric medications, you typically need to taper off them as well, just as you tapered on them. So that can easily add, let's say, another 3 weeks. So in order to simply try out one drug, you might be looking at 3 months. And if you do the mathematics, that means that in 1 year, you can try 4 different medications. It's not a total crapshoot. When doctors prescribe medications, the idea is that they're firstly looking at a drug class that they think is going to be useful for you. So it's pretty common, if we're talking about depression, for doctors to start with one of the SSRIs, and whether they try you first on Lexapro, Prozac, or Zoloft, 3 very common SSRIs, is very much up to their discretion. And sometimes there's other factors, like certain SSRIs are better specifically for conditions like OCD. But the idea is that a doctor will use their clinical judgment to trial you on one before the other. And then there's often treatment algorithms that will dictate the order in which different antidepressants are prescribed. So it might be that a doctor will try you on one SSRI. If that doesn't work, let's say either the drug doesn't work or you find the side effects too difficult to deal with, they'll move on to a second SSRI. Then they might move on to an SNRI, a serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. Then they might move on to an older drug called a tricyclic, and some doctors will even consider going to an MAIO. And then you're already quite far down the road into what's called treatment-resistant depression, or TRD, and there's other therapies that can be considered at that point as well. But most patients hopefully won't even make it that far. So the order of trialing and testing and trialing medications isn't as random as it will seem. However, it is time consuming for the reason that I mentioned, that because psychiatric meds, you need to give them a while to work, and you typically don't want to start and stop them in a very, very sharp manner that'll shock your brain and whatnot. It does take a little bit of a while. Now, one word of advice I want to give to patients is that when you talk to other people who have your conditions, whether it's ADHD or anxiety or depression, it's very common for this to be quite a painstaking process. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. The first reason is, as I mentioned, it can take a while to find the right drug for you. It's not uncommon for patients to try 5 or 6 or even 7 different medications before finding the right drug. And the second reason, very much related to that, is that it might take a while for patients to find the accurate diagnosis or the accurate diagnoses. So if you're attempting to treat the wrong condition, that's going to obviously delay the process a bit in finding the optimal medication for you. Just to give my treatment process as an example, when I first went to a psychiatrist, I was initially diagnosed with ADHD. Now, the thing is that ADHD, or classic symptoms like difficulty concentrating, etc., can be caused by ADHD, but they can also be caused by different conditions like mood disorders such as depression and anxiety. And that's another of many reasons why it's very important to work with mental health care professionals, because they use their expertise and knowledge of very in-depth knowledge of dealing with lots of patients with these conditions to make the accurate diagnosis. So personally, I tried 4 different psychostimulant medications before it became increasingly apparent that depression was the root cause of my difficulties. Then tried an SSRI, then tried Wellbutrin, and finally I'm on to a drug called Trintellix, which is vortioxetine, which is sort of a slightly more modern take on SSRIs. And now we have coming in the drug development pipeline a new class of medication again that are going to have SDNRIs, serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. They're going to affect the reuptake of 3 different neurotransmitter systems. So when I actually count out the amount of medications that I've tried, this actually makes Trintellix my 7th medication, and the process of trial and error has actually taken for me about 3 to 4 years. And the reason it's taken that long is because I stayed on one medication, Lexapro, for almost a year. Another, just to wrap up sort of this whole sort of take on the trial and error process, another reason for the trial and error, while you might need to go through it multiple times, is there is a tendency for certain medications to stop working after a number of years of treatment. Sometimes it doesn't happen. It happens to some people, doesn't happen to others. When it does, it tends to be called the poop out effect. And it's kind of a poorly understood phenomenon in which an SSRI might work really well for a patient. And then it seems as if your brain just no longer plays game, and the same drug that was working very well for you at a certain dose for a number of years stops working. And when or if the poop out phenomenon occurs, it's sort of a reinitiation of the trial and error process. It's often common for people to have to move on to an X medication that might not be as good, and then they find another one. So basically what I would say about the trial and error process, I encourage people taking these drugs. It does get... You might feel like I did if you're someone who, if you're a typical depressive personality, I would say you don't want to make a big deal about yourself. You don't want to cause a fuss. You might put yourself under pressure to take a medication that isn't really working, or the side effects aren't really tolerable, and you don't want to kind of be a nuisance to your doctor, whether that's a family doctor or a psychiatrist. And part of the reason I wanted to record this video is just to give people encouragement to keep going. If you speak to people, whether it's your friends or people on the internet who are open about having taken medication for the very common ones, depression, anxiety, or other mental health conditions, you'll find that it's exceptionally common for people to try quite a number of medications before finding the right medication, or just as commonly, the right combination of medications. The reason that this trial and error process exists in the first place as well, it's just not possible in 2023 to predict with 100% accuracy what drug is going to work well for one person, because people's brains and bodies and genetic makeups are variable. And that fact is compounded by the reality that trialing psychiatric meds is a sensitive, delicate, long process, because we're dealing with mental health, because these drugs need to be started and stopped gradually and continued for enough time to make a really informed decision as to whether the side effects are fine, the drug is efficacious for someone, etc. And that's basically why people sometimes wind up trialing and erroring psychiatric meds for not just months, but actually not uncommonly a couple of years at a time. Hope that was useful. If you're going through the process, to give you some encouragement, or at least to give you some expectations, or set some expectations about what it might be like. And if you do want to get more videos from me, do feel free to sign up to this YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.